What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Masters of the Universe, the new fantasy film from Travis Knight. Of course, this is the new He-Man movie adapting the famous 80s cartoon. This is the first He-Man movie since the live-action 1987 version starring Dolph Lundgren. This time around, Nicholas Galitzine is in the lead role, Camila Mendes, Jared Leto, Alison Brie also here. And this return to Eternia, return to the He-Man world on the big screen, it's been a long time coming. This film's been in various stages of development for a very long time. Most recently, Noah Centineo was attached in the lead role for some time. Nevertheless, the film is now here from Amazon MGM Studios, hot off the success of Project Hail Mary. And the film also comes from Mattel, of course, who really kicked off mining their own IP to great success a few years back with Barbie. Travis Knight is an interesting director at the helm. He, of course, is the studio head over at Laika, primarily working in animation, but his last live-action movie was the Transformers spin-off Bumblebee, which was definitely a different vibe than other aspects of that franchise. Now he's back with his take on He-Man. Masters of the Universe is surprisingly competent because this movie knows what it is. The tone of the movie is spot on. It leans into the camp. It's very self-aware. It's very comedic. It knows how ridiculous He-Man has always been. Nicholas Galitzine is quite winning because he plays the role goofy. He plays the role very humorously. Ultimately, this script is pretty straightforward and the movie is definitely way too long at over 2 hours. So it's not like we're getting something as brilliant as Ryan Gosling's Ken from Barbie, for example. This is a much more down-the-middle approach from Mattel mining one of their IPs, but at least they knew the right way to go about it. Camila Mendes is very sturdy as Teela, and surprisingly, Jared Leto is right at home as the villainous Skeletor, albeit with a CGI face, so you don't actually see Leto so much as you just hear him in the movie. Alison Brie is probably the biggest scene stealer of them all as Skeletor's lead henchwoman. Despite the movie's amusing charms, I have a hard time seeing it being successful enough to kickstart this franchise on the big screen. He-Man is definitely a dated 80s IP at this point. I think most people who didn't watch the cartoon growing up are probably more knowledgeable of Skeletor memes and GIFs these days. Despite this movie's high budget, the visuals are pretty flat. I think a lot of the CGI sequences where there's obvious backdrops and green screen in effect, nothing really pops off. Nothing is garishly bad. I think low expectations such as that, a lot of people were carrying into this movie, so it's actually coming across as more of a pleasant surprise. Nothing is super spectacular on screen at any time. I did have a lot of time for the first act of the movie where Adam is on Earth away from his home after being sent away following Skeletor's taking over of the kingdom at the very beginning of the movie. Him acting like a fish out of water, even though he's grown up out of childhood into adulthood in Oklahoma City, was quite funny. His obsession with finding the lost power sword is key to getting home. His roommate just kind of riffing with his nonsensical musings about this faraway realm. The scene of him on a hinge date and talking all about this with a straight face, a lot of that's really good. I think Galitzine does a great job at handling the humor and the goofiness, and he does come across as quite winning. He, of course, broke out a few years ago with The Idea of You alongside Anne Hathaway for Amazon. Not exactly a new actor, but he's been around for some time, but that was definitely the breakthrough most recently. And I think he did a good job. And Camila Mendes as Teela, who was his childhood friend, who eventually is able to find him and bring him back to their world. I think she does a nice job. She's most famous for being on Riverdale. This is my first time really seeing her, but as playing, the second lead of the movie, who has to project that strength and confidence that Adam doesn't yet have as his, powers are yet untapped. I think she does a great job with that. Her father, played by Idris Elba, kind of running back a lot of the stuff he would do as Heimdall in the Thor movies. This is the Man-at-Arms character, but he's a lot more comedic than, say, Josh Brolin's character on Dune, for example. The other sidekick characters, as you learn about them, they're all just part of the ensemble. They don't really have much characterization. They're all pretty one-note characters, but there's some amusing stuff as Adam, tries to motivate and rally everyone. Him using words from our world and bringing them to this weird fantasy land and these references they don't understand. I think the comedy's pretty consistent in the movie. There's actually quite some crass comedy, honestly. It's not exactly that kid friendly. It's PG-13. It's not bloody violence by any means. It's not gory, but there's plenty of violence. But there's definitely a lot of adult humor in the movie, more than I was expecting. But yeah, I think Skeletor, honestly, it did work for me. Obviously, such a goofy, ridiculous villain. it always has been. He-Man in general, Masters of the Universe in general, has always been this grab bag of an IP. Like that's kind of how it was conceived in the first time. Mattel kind of jumping on the bandwagon with stuff like Star Wars and just trying to have their own stuff to market to young boys, basically in the 80s. That was kind of the idea. So like the world of He-Man, the world of Masters of the Universe takes a lot of stuff in. It's sci-fi and fantasy. It's light, it's dark, it's kind of whatever it needs to be. And Skeletor, I think, fits the movie well. I like the voice modulation they would do with Jared Leto's voice, but also Leto is a pretty good, piece of casting for the goofiness that Skeletor also will exhibit. He can do the menace and the goofiness, and Alison Brie is able to riff right off that and play things with a straight face and cater to Skeletor's ego, but also clearly have her own self-interest in the back of her mind. I enjoyed her presence. Notably, Jared Leto has done exactly zero press for this movie, which is quite funny. Of course, he's been canceled more recently, but also just hasn't been the most successful box office presence following Morbius and last fall's Tron Ares. Perhaps they just didn't want to lead with him in general, despite the casting of him in the movie. I would have liked a little bit more from the Green Tiger character. It's just kind of a CGI nothing burger as an entity once it's really in the movie. And speaking to the film's length, I mean, it feels like there's a few different endpoints the movie has, but then it kind of just recycles part of the act and restarts that for another final conflict, so to speak. It was definitely one of those movies where I was like, well, I know it's not 90 minutes long, but at the 90-minute mark, you're like, oh, you could have ended it this way if you wanted to, but then it really does keep going. And I'm sure some people will feel that length as well. Nice to see the obligatory Dolph Lundgren cameo, very fittingly in the gym in the beginning of the movie. But yeah, I mean, the tracking for this movie has come down. It's pretty obviously now going to be outgrossed by the return of Scary Movie with Scary Movie 6. Not something I think anyone was expecting when this movie was greenlit, especially at its budget level. But yeah, I just don't think there's enough of an audience for this movie for it to be successful. But the fact that it's like surprisingly solid, speaking to the decent reviews it's getting, by no means a home run, but also not a, embarrassing strikeout either. So maybe over time this will do well on VOD and do well on Amazon Prime. We'll see, but this is no Project Hail Mary, that's for sure. But let me know, what did you think of Masters of the Universe? Were you pleasantly surprised following lowered expectations such as me? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.